Hey Airsofters, James here with Wyshtech Hobbies, helping while entertaining you guys take your Airsoft experience to a whole new level. On this channel, I do how-tos, reviews, gearbox teardown reviews, and so much more, just like this video. At any time in the video, let me know your opinions about this gearbox teardown review in the comments down below. And just in case, there are timestamps down there as well, in case you want to skip around. All right, let's rock and roll. Would you like to know what the internals are like in this Matrix Sportsline M4 Generation 3? Well, today I'm going to show you what is hiding inside this wonderful airsoft gun here. Before we get started, we're going to do a chrono and an accuracy range test just to get a baseline on this thing. And then afterwards, we're going to be taking this thing completely apart, tear down the gearbox, and we'll see what's inside and do a quick review and see if we can make this thing a little bit better. All right, let's go. It's time to chrono. Let's get it done. So we're gonna chrono with 0.2 gram BBs. We're gonna do 10 shots to get an average, and then we'll move on to the next step. That's pretty low, though it's supposed to be 300 FPS. I got a sneaky suspicion that this thing's having compression problems. All right, it's time to do an accuracy range test. We're gonna be shooting at 50 foot, 75 foot, and 100 foot range targets using 0.2 gram BBs. Due to the nature of the low FPS this thing's putting out, we're gonna have to use some light BBs. All right, let's go. 10 shots, 50 feet, here we go. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 75 feet target, 10 shots. Here we go. 4, 5, 6. All right. 100 foot target, 10 shots. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, now that we got that out of the way, we're going to take apart this gearbox and find out what's inside, go over the parts, and see if we can make it better. So we're going to start with the compression system. All right, here we go. We're going to line out the parts. Starting with the tappet plate. Looks pretty basic. It does, however, have a little bit of misshape. It's not perfectly straight, but it's not bad. I do like that it's pretty flexible, and that's a good thing to have. This tappet plate is not at a perfect 90-degree angle. Moving on to the return spring. The return spring in this Matrix M4 is pretty basic. There's nothing special about it. However, I will say that there's a tight tension on it, so it's definitely not a weak spring. The nozzle, on the other hand, is a little bit disappointing. There's no O-ring inside. It's always good to have an O-ring inside your nozzle there to help create a 100% compression. There's a pretty bad molding line on this nozzle. It's definitely pretty cheap. So here's the cylinder head. It's pretty basic, just like any of your typical cheap cylinder heads. I will note that the nozzle tube here is pretty thick. So that's about it with the cylinder head, nothing too special. So here's the cylinder. It's a full type, and it feels like it's aluminum. I personally would not use a full type in this particular M4, mainly because of the length of the M4. So moving on, the last piece of the compression system is, well, the piston. So right off the bat, which I think is really cool, is that we got a full metal rack piston. which is pretty damn good for the price point that this M4 is. And the piston head is ported. So here later in the video, we are going to do a compression test and see how well the compression is in this M4. So we're gonna move on to the gear set. Moving on to the gear set, you can see that this airsoft gun was actually shimmed. Don't know how well, so we'll check that later when we go to reshim this gearbox. And we have a selector delay chip on the sector gear. The gears themselves, they feel like a hardened steel, and the cut on them is look pretty precise. Sector gear looks pretty good. Here's the bevel. Kind of looks like it's a CNC machined. All the cuts are pretty damn even. It looks like a regular old 18:1 gear ratio gears. Later, we're going to check to see how well this airsoft gun was shimmed, so you know what to expect. And finally, the spur gear. Just a typical spur gear. Nothing too special about it. Looks very durable, feels durable. I mean, for the price point, I'd say that they're decent gears. Anti-reversal latch, there's nothing special about it. It just looks like your typical anti-reversal latch in any other airsoft gun. So nothing too special there. What's neat is these are 8mm bushings and bearings for the bevel. Here's the MOSFET that's in these guns. There's your micro switch. Little tiny lever right there. Beep, beep. So there's the model of MOSFET that S&T went with on this. If we flip it on the other side, there's a micro switch for the selector switch for semi and full auto. So the way that the safety works on this, when you flip your rifle to safe, the selector plate pushes this piece right here forward, which in turn brings that piece forward. And the trigger is designed in such a way that when that happens, the back piece gets blocked so you can't pull the trigger. It works a little different than your typical version 2 gearboxes. We got a linear spring for this guy. I think this is an M90 spring, judging by how well this thing chronoed. The spring guide itself is nothing special. I would definitely upgrade this. All it is a plastic shaft and a button in the back. Nothing too special. The gearbox itself is decent for the price point. It's reinforced around the gears and a little bit up on the front of the gearbox where it typically cracks on our high stress builds. Alright, now that the inspection's out of the way, time to check the compression. With the nozzle completely forward, I'm going to hold down the tappet plate so it doesn't move. Cover my finger over the nozzle and we'll do a full compression. Let's see how it goes. Alright, here we go. That is terrible. For the record, guys, this should not be this easy. So now we're going to check without the nozzle. Compression's okay, so that's something that we're going to have to fix. This nozzle is garbage. It does not hold seal whatsoever. I've had nozzles with no O-ring seal a lot better than this piece of crap. Alright, let's move on to see how well this thing is shimmed, shall we? Alright, we're going to start with the sector gear. And just so you guys know, I was very careful to not lose the position of these shims when I took apart this gearbox. So we're going to start with the sector gear first. Wow, that is bad. First gear right off the bat definitely needs a reshim. Moving on to the spur gear now. Let's see how this is. Alright, now we got the spur gear in. Now let's check it. It's not too bad. Not as bad as the sector gear, but it's still pretty bad. Alright, we're moving on to the bevel gear. We're going to check it and see how much play we got with the bevel. Alright, the bevel gear's in. Now we're going to go ahead and check it. There is no side-to-side movement. There's no play in that. Might be over shimmed since we got a bearing here. Typically when you shim ball bearing bushings, you want a little bit of play. That way you know there's no sideways pressure against your ball bearings. That's typically what makes them go out pretty quick. And that's how S&T shims their guns, ladies and gentlemen. Alright, let's see how well the AOE is on this thing. Come on, S&T. Let's see what you got. Alright guys, I'm going to try to do the best I can to show you the AOE on this thing. So bear with me here. It could use some AOE correction. So it's a good thing this thing has a full metal rack. I imagine this thing would last for a while. Okay, now that you guys know what the compression, shimming, and area of engagement is like on this Matrix M4, we're gonna find out what the volume ratio is like. I measured the volumes between the barrel and inside the gearbox, and I got a ratio of 2.43. For this M4, 2.43, that is way over volume for this M4 platform, especially with the FPS rating that it is shooting at. What that's gonna cause is some pretty big groupings, and that's not a good thing, especially at 100 feet. And now we're gonna move forward and do a basic tune-up and see if we can make some improvements on this M4. All right, guys, now that we got the parts changed out in this M4, we're gonna go ahead and chrono test this and see what we get. All right, let's go.
All right, testing with 0.2 gram BBs. 10 shots, here we go.
Well, there you go and there you be. So I would say it's a significant improvement going from 270 FPS all the way up to averaging right about 309 FPS. So that's pretty damn good. Definitely was a compression leak problem. So without further ado, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the accuracy range test. All right, 100-foot target, 10 shots with 0.2 gram BBs. Here we go. Well, there you go. Gotta say, we got a significant improvement going from, let's say, the 100-foot target. We went from hitting that target twice to 6 times. Not bad. That's a good improvement, and it goes to show how important it is to make sure that you get your airsoft gun volume correctly for the weight of BBs that you're currently using. All right, guys, now I'll give you my final thoughts on this Matrix M4 Sport line. So I'll give you some 3 goods that I found in this. First of all, the MOSFET and the micro switch that comes in this M4 is pretty impressive. For the fact that I only paid $112 for this thing, you gotta admit that's pretty cool. And the second good thing, it's got a rotary hop up. It's pretty neat for a cheap gun. So the third good thing, despite the fact that this whole M4, for the most part, is made out of plastic, except for the outer barrel, it's a decent quality plastic, including the buffer tube. The buffer tube is even made out of plastic, and it's not your typical cheap stuff. I mean, this thing's pretty rugged, so I wouldn't worry too much about the fact that it's made out of plastic for a gun that's about $112, and you can't complain. I mean, that's to be expected. Okay, and now the 3 bads. So the first bad, that the MOSFET or the micro switch, one of the two, or maybe both, they don't like the cold. If it's below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, it does like this trigger pull skip thing. 9. Any warmer than that, there's no issues from what I noticed. I tried it in different temperatures, and it seems to happen around 32 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a little weird, but other than that, it's pretty impressive. So the second bad thing is once we had this thing apart and we took a look at the nozzle of this airsoft gun, that was one of the biggest reasons why this M4 had such a big compression problem. So I went ahead and replaced it, and the nozzle I replaced it with is a ZCI nozzle with an internal O-ring. And I had to replace the cylinder head because the snout of that cylinder head, at the end it was skinnier, and then as it towards the back, it was thicker. So as the nozzle came forward, it would leak out all the air by the time the piston's released. And the last bad thing about this M4, it was way over volumed. We calculated, what was it, 2.4 to 1 about ratio for this M4. Because of the length of the barrel and the low FPS, that is really high. That's why I put a 3/4 cylinder in this M4. So the third bad thing is that this M4 had a full type cylinder, which given the length of what it has, it way over volumed this M4, which caused it to shoot so inaccurate the first time around when we went and took it out to the range test. Barely hit the 100-foot target twice. Once I put a 3/4 type cylinder in this M4, As you can see, when we did the range test the second time, we hit the 100-foot target 6 times. And the other BBs that did miss the target barely missed it. So it goes to show that volume air ratio is very important to keep in mind. So if you guys got something out of this video, flip that like button down below and tell me what you think of the video down in the comments. And by the way, everything that I recommended and products throughout this video is left in the description down below. So without further ado, I'm going to take off. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and had fun like I did making this video for you guys. See you later. Bye.